It is quite bizarre how constantly we discuss baby boomers and millennials. We analyze Generation Z as if they are a captivating, newly discovered breed. Yet, nestled right between them is a whole demographic that simply flies under the radar, largely ignored and practically unseen. We are talking about Gen X, those born in the window of 1965 to 1980, who are often the stoic senior colleagues at your job or your occasionally distant parents. They are the architects of our digital world who refrain from sharing photos of their morning meals. But there is a hidden truth. The mental framework of this group is likely the least accurately perceived among all age cohorts today, largely because they were the initial wave of widespread latchkey kids. Imagine the scenario. The year is 1978. You are just 8 years of age, and you return to a vacant residence since both mother and father are employed full-time. There are no mobile devices, no smart doorbells, and absolutely zero methods for adults to verify your safety. You unlock the door, prepare your own food, tackle your school assignments in solitude, and simply bide your time. According to research in the American Journal of Orthopsychiatry, around 7 million kids aged 5 to 13 were routinely left alone post-school by the year 1984. This represented a massive demographic discovering early on that relying on others' presence isn't always an option. Those vacant rooms fostered more than just independence. It ingrained the harsh reality that behaviors yield tangible outcomes, the kind you cannot simply negotiate away. Once the adults eventually returned, expectations were crystal clear, as discipline was delivered swiftly and without hesitation. Your personal emotions or desire to discuss your feelings were generally disregarded. If you misbehaved, the penalty was immediate and definitive. From a cognitive perspective, this established what scientists term a high contingency environment, linking deeds directly to results without any protective delay. The mind was trained to forecast repercussions instantly, explaining why this cohort naturally plans several moves ahead, often confusing younger folks. Furthermore, this group matured observing adults preach about security, only to witness skyrocketing marital separations throughout the 1970s and 1980s. They observed dedicated employees pouring their souls into corporations, only to receive termination notices during subsequent downsizing phases. Society promised them that diligent labor and obedience would guarantee a prosperous existence. However, the guidelines were abruptly altered right before their eyes. While mental health experts might label this mindset defensive pessimism, this age group merely considers it practicality rather than outright cynicism. It is more accurate to say they constructed psychological shielding. They hope for positive outcomes, yet fundamentally anticipate sudden betrayals, simply because history repeatedly showed them just that. This underlying expectation is a primary factor behind their relative silence on modern digital platforms. They were raised in an era where personal secrecy was the default standard. If you made a mistake during childhood, only a few individuals found out, and the issue ended there. There were no ubiquitous cameras or internet fame, merely a few uncomfortable recollections confined to a local hangout or driveway. The concept of broadcasting personal details to unknown audiences does not seem thrilling. Rather, it appears dangerous. This reluctance isn't driven by technological ignorance, but by an early realization that anonymity equals security. Consequently, this generation effectively transformed sarcasm into armor, making jests and maintaining distance to deflect pain before it could resonate. The origins of this attitude are quite evident, having been raised under the constant threat of the Cold War, where educators discussed atomic conflict as casually as poor weather. Educational facilities conducted duck and cover exercises, pretending flimsy furniture offered real protection. Whenever authority figures behave as if total destruction is imminent, while simultaneously demanding you remain calm, you adapt to balancing contradictory concepts, cultivating emotional detachment as a precaution. Yet, what is truly intriguing is that, notwithstanding these challenges, they cultivated a unique professional philosophy that remains prominent now. They avoid bragging or tweeting about their labor. They simply execute the tasks. Such diligence was molded during youth via occupations that currently feel practically prehistoric. Examples include pre-dawn newspaper deliveries, packing supermarket items, or operating drive-through tills requiring mental math if the technology failed. These roles were not meant for portfolio enhancement. They served as gritty entry points into maturity, where a preteen held the duty of distributing daily information to a whole subdivision. Having observed their elders devastated by business reorganizations, they discarded faith in institutional allegiance, substituting it with an intense devotion to personal capability. While they cannot dictate corporate downsizing, they can ensure they remain the most indispensable asset when cuts occur. An unusual contradiction lies at the heart of their mental landscape, as they are concurrently the most autonomous yet discreetly cooperative age bracket. They will rarely request assistance, preferring self-reliance, a habit formed since they were toddlers. However, should you require aid, they will arrive without theatrics or the need to document it online. This trait stems from developing intense peer connections driven by survival when guardians were unavailable. Furthermore, their dynamic with leadership requires analysis due to its complexity. They revere actual skill over mere job labels. When a leader secures their rank via verifiable expertise, this group will offer unwavering support. Conversely, they possess absolutely no tolerance for individuals holding prestigious roles who lack practical knowledge. Their skepticism toward leadership originates from witnessing inept officials execute disastrous choices throughout their formative years, navigating events spanning from political scandals to mishandled health emergencies. They also confronted severe financial challenges unseen by previous cohorts. The latter end of this generation finished university just as early tech markets collapsed. Meanwhile, the earliest members were reaching their professional peaks exactly when the severe 2008 fiscal crash occurred. Having suffered repeated financial trauma, they frequently maintain varied sources of revenue today. This behavior isn't driven by an inherent desire to innovate, but rather the hard-learned lesson that permanence is an illusion. Consequently, this demographic often wrestles with extreme independence that borders on clinical worry, according to academic observers. They demonstrate exceptional proficiency during emergencies, yet this strength is largely fueled by a deep-seated reluctance to lean on anyone else. Studies within the Journal of Adult Development indicate this group logs minimal rates of pursuing communal comfort during times of duress. This avoidance isn't due to isolation, but rather the perception that requesting help equates to failure, a mindset that also influenced their educational habits. Prior to global connectivity, gathering facts carried substantial gravity. These individuals invested massive time in archives, scouring index systems for one specific volume, holding a necessary solution. Data acquisition involved tangible labor and temporal investment, causing them to treasure their acquired wisdom distinctly. Mind experts label this phenomenon deeper encoding, implying that data earned through toil is cemented more firmly into one's mental database. They mastered manual repairs simply because it was necessary whenever a television malfunctioned or a bicycle broke. Contacting a professional was not standard practice. Instead, you inverted the bicycle, accepted the grime, and resolved the issue independently. This fostered an innate mechanical logic, cementing the conviction that adequate persistence and basic tools were sufficient to conquer tangible obstacles. Presently, they observe their own offspring maturing in an utterly contrasting environment, characterized by overprotective guardians, relentless monitoring, and digital archiving of every moment. They showered their progeny with the focus they themselves lacked, though they occasionally fear this has rendered their children overly fragile, reliant, and exposed. To this generation, exposure equates to risk. They are potentially the final demographic to genuinely comprehend solitude, the state of boredom, and the art of resolving dilemmas without algorithmic assistance. They are not inherently superior to younger or older cohorts, merely distinct, having been forged during a transitional epoch when the previous era was fading, while the modern one was still emerging. Functioning as a transitional link, they receive little fanfare. They simply exist, performing their duties, maintaining societal cohesion, and anticipating zero rewards. Perhaps their ultimate defining characteristic is a profound indifference to external validation. If this resonated deeply, consider subscribing